Is there freedom in the spirit world? Can evil people and tyrants force their will upon us in the spirit world? Does God force anyone to be good? My topic today is The Beautiful Gifts of the Spirit World, Part 5, The Gift of Freedom from Tyranny, Part 1. Freedom in the spirit world is a controversial topic, partly because it is a topic that deals with the possibility of heaven and hell and where we'll end up and the consequences of our actions in the physical plane. Since no one can actually prove anything about the spirit world, it is difficult to describe the reality of the spirit world with any certainty. We can only express what we believe, and sometimes that belief hardens into doctrine, which often exerts control over the spiritual lives of individuals, which is the very opposite of freedom. Thus, attempting to assert anything about freedom in the spirit world becomes a conundrum. I would like to present a description of what I personally believe about freedom in the spirit world. It may conflict with other doctrines and may in itself seem doctrinal to some individuals. Rest assured, it is only what I feel and hope is true and owes no allegiance to any particular sectarian body of rules. I believe that freedom from tyranny in the spirit world stems from two assumptions. The first is that the spirit world is divided into many layers, with each level inhabited by individuals of similar qualities of spiritual and emotional development. This geography of the spirit world has been described in many testimonies from a large variety of writers, including the authors quoted in these talks. It seems that the spirit world is more complex than a simple division of hell and heaven. Instead, it has a huge gradation of layers based on the relative goodness of the residents, with the lowest levels reserved for the unfortunate souls who are almost completely separated from the virtues of kindness and compassion. I say almost because there are many testimonies that even a truly horrible individual still has a spark of inviolable goodness deep within, a spark that will one day guide that person upward. Freedom from tyranny is based on the reported phenomenon that residents of the lower realms are unable to travel into the middle and higher realms without permission and an escort from above. In other words, a tyrant can no longer harm his former subjects because in many cases, the former victims of his tyranny are living in higher realms that he cannot reach. Thus, if people are living in a relatively good realm of the spirit world, they will not find any tyrants to plague them. The second assumption about freedom from tyranny in the spirit world is that God never forces anyone to do anything. Many testimonies share that there is no need for laws and police. Everything is done voluntarily. Since one's residence on any particular level is a reflection of one's spiritual state, there is a strong motivation to follow a good and kind path. As one's internal qualities change for the better, the individual is liberated and moves to a higher realm. If a person changes for the worse, I assume that the person would find himself going downward. I do not know if that has been reported or even happens. I would think that there would be a strong motivation to avoid that descent. Still, every person is truly free to be as evil or as good as they wish to be, just as it is in the physical world. The life-changing difference about the spiritual world is that one's thoughts, heart, and actions are reported to have a direct impact upon one's circumstances. The book A Wanderer in the Spirit Lands is a volume of messages transcribed by a medium named A. Farnese, published in London in 1896. The messages are from a young and formerly dissolute Italian man named Francesco, who lived in the late 1800s. In Part 3, The Kingdom of Hell, Chapter 21, Francesco visits a lower realm and speaks with a murderer. Francesco asks what will happen to the man, and his guide responds. He has just come from earth after dying a violent death, and his spirit is weak, but ere long he will grow strong, and then he will go forth and join other marauders like himself who go about in bands and add another horror to this place. After the lapse of many years, it may even be centuries, the desire for better things will awake, and he will begin to progress, but very slowly, for the soul which has been in chains so long and is so poorly developed, so degraded, as in this man, often takes cycles of time to develop its dormant powers. I feel personally comforted by the view that God does not condemn anyone to hell. Those who die and arrive in a lower realm do so because their own internal state resonates with that type of atmosphere. When many people arrive in that type of environment, they might call it hell, and it might be very unpleasant, but it is not and never will be eternal hell. Why? Simply because each person is always free to be good or evil and can decide at any moment to change the direction of their actions. This conclusion assumes that God is a forgiving, compassionate, and loving creator. No one can force us to be good, and no one can force us to be evil. Ultimately, no one can force us to do anything at all. We always have a choice if we're willing to accept the consequences of our choice. When we want to be good, no one can prevent us from doing so. That might seem simplistic, but it is based on the premise that we do indeed make our own decisions, even if our decision is to allow ourselves to be influenced by others, or by our circumstances, or by our own conflicted desires. Evil choices affect our minds and hearts and darken our spirits, both in the physical and the spiritual world. However, many spiritual writings testify that the consequences of our choices differ between the worlds. For example, in the physical world, a person following an evil path might not notice that his spiritual atmosphere is changing for the worse. His physical body and the physical environment allow him to ignore the reality of his internal state. He may continue to fulfill his selfish and harmful desires, all the while thinking that everything is fine. He may dominate others through force and become a tyrant. It is the tragedy of the physical world that evil people can terrorize others and commit heinous crimes against innocent victims. The family members of a victim of a tyrant might rail at heaven and say, "How could a God of love allow my beloved to be murdered? Why didn't God stop this crime?" I truly believe that God weeps for everyone who is hurt and feels pain about crime and war that we can hardly fathom. It is an unimaginable price to pay for the gift of freedom. By allowing human beings to have freedom, God also allows humans to follow their own paths of good and evil, often with tragic results. Yet, even with the pain that comes to both God and humans because of freedom, I believe that it is worth it. Freedom is priceless, for with freedom, humans can grow to become creative and loving incarnations of God. This concludes part 5 of the 7 videos. The next video will be part 6, The Gift of Freedom from Tyranny, part 2. Thank you for watching. You can follow me on Twitter at Falkenbrown and email me at peterbrown@worldcommunity.com. I invite you to subscribe, leave a comment, and click on the like button. I also invite you to become a patron of the arts and visit my webpage at patreon.com/Peter Falkenberg Brown, where you will have the opportunity to support this video channel by donating a small or larger amount each month. I am very grateful for all your support. I could not do this without you. So, until next time, love and blessings, and thank you.